Hey everyone, it's Alex, and let's be honest, it's not a great time to be a Marvel Snap player, but we do have 11 decks we want to talk about today. But before that, I want to just let you guys know that I will be addressing the Kid Omega situation alongside Coccia on a very special edition of the Snapchat that will be airing on Monday. So if you've been curious as to what my thoughts are, I will be providing my perspective on Monday. We got a couple surprises for you guys there, and I'm looking forward to having that conversation because I think it's very important. With that being said, I'm in the process of planning and finalizing some new forms of really exciting and interesting content, even outside of the realm of Marvel Snap itself. So if you're someone who is starting to wane in interest on Marvel Snap but is subscribed and you do like the content I produce, stay tuned. Stay subscribed because I'm going to have some announcements upcoming with some new forms of content that I'm hoping that you'll enjoy, some of which may be even outside of the gaming field as a whole. So I'm really excited to bring you some new stuff. And so if Snap's not your thing anymore and you're starting to feel a little bit of fatigue, don't you worry. I do intend to bring you some new and cool content soon. With that being said, let's talk about what we're here to talk about, and that is the top decks in Marvel Snap right now. We're going to be starting with a bonus deck running a 54% win rate and a 0.46 cube rate. This is the current best performing shell of Nightmare. It might surprise you that it does have the Sauron-based shell, but it's also featuring Merlin and, of course, Misery in here as well. It's actually a really fascinating list. I actually find it surprising to see something along the lines of Misery, but what Misery can do is you can actually use it to not only get rid of the Nightmare, but if you don't like the rolls you get, you can actually play Misery, wipe out Nightmare, and then re-roll the things in your hand, which is kind of fascinating. A really interesting take on Nightmare, and currently the highest win rate and highest cube rate version of Nightmare, although there are a number of different shells that are doing pretty well as well. The Pixie-based shells aren't quite doing as hot. They're hovering in like the low 50 percentile win rate range. This is currently running a higher cube rate and a higher win rate across the board. Although the Pixie shells are a ton of fun and I've found success with them, this is statistically performing better. Okay, so if you're interested in playing Nightmare for those weekend missions, you can do so right here. Going into the statistical top 10, once again, we used untapped-based statistics for this analysis, and we ranked them by the win rate, and then we secondarily ranked them by the cube rate. We're using untapped-based statistics, infinite only. We're going to start with Erisham running a 58% win rate and a 0.53 cube rate. Erisham and Thanos continues to be a very powerful combination. This is a deck that was performing very well in tournament play as well, and it should not surprise you that it slaps. What might surprise you, though, are the additions of Agamotto and Infinity Ultron. In the case of Infinity Ultron, naturally, those stones being changed to 2-cost cards was a tremendous power infusion into that card. And as a result, you have a deck that, especially if you like playing Conquest or, any of those competitive formats, this is a great deck to take to Conquest because you're always got a very fun kind of curveball you can throw at your opponent. Yes, the deck size is massive, but through Erisham, the draw engine of Thanos, of course, the high-impact skills of Agamotto, and the versatility of things like Legion, right? You're able to put up a lot of power, and you're able to do some game-winning plays alongside Shang-Chi, Juggernaut, and Alioth. It feels like you always have options here to make high-impact plays, so it doesn't surprise me that Erisham is holding on to number 10. As we go to number 9, it's going to be Mr. Negative. Now, Mr. Negative was absolutely insane last week in terms of its cube rate. It was one of the first times I've ever seen a post-infinite cube rate over 1 cube. Now it's running a 58% win rate of 0.65, which is it's still incredible. Anything above 0.3 cube rate is phenomenal, and it's still doing absolutely great. But the numbers have come down a little bit. More games on it, so obviously since last week, people are like, yeah, I'm going to play some negative, and this is what you get. Obviously, this is a place where Esme Cuckoo does do very well. It's the key home for that particular card. And you have the obvious, it's the negative deck, right? You got the enablers to get it out early, including Ravonna. What's interesting here is that you're not going with a Psylocke in this particular shell. You're leaning into the Esme Cuckoo in order to kind of try to reach into that negative or get some value elsewhere. But if you are short a card, just know that you can utilize Psylocke in order to have a second option in conjunction with Ravonna to get the Mr. Negative out quicker. Making this deck is Shang-Chi, which I think is particularly valuable. Shang-Chi right now is punching out a lot of cards because, well, naturally you have a lot of experimentation with Nightmare, and Nightmare wants to run a lot of those big cards, Infinite, Gigantos, Atumas, or whatever, right? There's a reason why people are playing Nightmare's decks. First of all, they're a ton of fun. But secondly, Shang-Chi will give you an opportunity to counter those Nightmare decks effectively. So a little bit of a new take on negative, but still running a very strong cube rate and a very strong win rate. Going to number 8, we have a new entrant to the list, and this is C6. Wow. And for the record, a 58% win rate is simply overshowered by the 0.72. Overshowered? Is that what I said? I'm pretty sure I said overshowered. Sorry, I'm exhausted. Overshadowing the 58% win rate is the 0.72 cube rate, which is astronomical. This deck here runs cards like Lizard, Maximus, like really high impact 2-drops in terms of the power, but like, really negative downsides. But what I really like about this deck is that it doesn't lean completely into the 6 powers. I love seeing cards like Luke Cage, Cosmo in here. Obviously, Luna Snow. I've been a huge fan of Luna Snow. Most importantly, a card like Malekith will help reduce the downside risk of cards like Lizard or Maximus. It can help sneak out the Cerebros. And Omega Red finally making a list where it can have some high impact. Obviously, you have the Moonstone, which can be utilized to kind of maximize. What a weird sentence. Mystique. You could Mystique the Omega Red and Moonstone that. You can obviously Mystique Cerebro Moonstone. A lot of different options here. And although it's a 5, you are getting the Sarah out in order to kind of sneak some extra combo play potential out there. So anyways, a very fascinating deck. C6, a newcomer into the meta. I feel like it's been a while since we've talked about Ajax, and this has been consistently one of the best decks in the game that no one plays and no one really pays much attention to. The addition of Laufey has been very good to this list, a Series 4 card from a limited time game mode that wasn't completely suspect and full of inflationary garbage. Diamondback making this deck, and I tell you this sincerely, I think Diamondback might be one of the best cards in the game that like no one plays at all. If you have the cards here, I'm telling you, give this deck a shot. Like, it is by far some of the most fun I have playing Toxic. Now, I will say that the cube rate is much lower than some of the highest hitters here right now. And that's a little unfortunate because I do think the deck is a ton of fun. You do have a lot of tech here alongside the Red Guardian. Man-Thing is effective against the Thanos-based shells because you're not seeing like Destroy-based Thanos. The stones are sticking for the most part, and anytime you're playing Malekith and Agent Venom, I think you got some tricks up your sleeve, and I'm just a huge fan of it. But generally speaking here, Ajax has continued to be a very good option for people looking to have a Toxic-based deck, take them to Infinite and beyond. So Ajax, a number 7, running a 59% win rate. Coming in at number 6, we're going to have Scream. Nothing fancy here. It's basically a stream deck. You got a 59% win rate, a 0.34 cube rate. What makes this deck tick is the obvious new additions of Batroc the Leaper and Hydra Stomper. Hydra Stomper has been a consistent addition to this version of Scream that utilizes the Silk and, of course, the Spider-Man in order to kind of generate your own value while also disrupting your opponent. A deck like this has a higher floor than the traditional Scream-based decks because you have a thing you're doing, even if you don't draw into the Screams and stuff like that. You don't draw a Scream, but you have Captain America Sam Wilson and Hydra Stomper. You're generating value anyways. There's multiple win conditions here. There's multiple ways to put up power, and I think that's what's been so good about Scream. Ever since they started kind of taking power off Scream gradually, it's found other ways to generate power. It's been less about the plan A of getting Scream massive and more about like, I got plan A, B, and C, and this deck always feels like I have a plan of attack. And so this deck is incredibly consistent. Still one of my favorite to play. Still can sneak you into some very interesting locations. It can scam you sometimes as well. But generally speaking, I do like the Silk play. And yeah, this deck is absolutely phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Very low floor, very high floor, very high ceiling. This is a great deck if you're looking towards Infinite and beyond. That's going to take us to number 5, and number 5 is going to be Agent Havoc. One of my favorite decks in the game, straight up. I know I've been kind of pumping up some of these decks a little bit, but I'll be honest with you, I've been talking about these Havoc decks for a while. Surprising me is that these decks and the top versions of them still do not run Kitty Pryde. Instead, what you're focusing in on are the Demon from the Hood. You have Bast, of course, Nico providing the 1-drop. You just have a lot of options here with regards to like generating like some sort of like value alongside the 3 drops of Red Guardian, Sage, or Cassandra Nova. Most notably, if you play Merlin on 2, the 1-costed spells or skills coming to your hand do allow you to play alongside a 3-drop, even if you have Havoc on turn 4, because you'll always have 4 energy, which means that turn 5 you can play Red Guardian plus a skill, and then on turn 6 you can play Sage plus a skill. And I think that's why the Kitty Pryde no longer makes this deck, because you have the Hood, because you have Nico, because you have Merlin, you have enough options to play that 1-drop alongside a 3 or something else to generate some value, and still letting Thena do her thing, still letting Angela do the thing. I would likely cut Angela from a deck without Kitty Pryde, but the stats don't lie. The deck is still doing Very good. Agent Havoc coming in at number 5. We go to number 4 now, and number 4 is going to be Agent Bounce. Agent Venom having a back-to-back session here, and this deck is doing phenomenally well. We're talking about a 61% win rate and a 0.54 cube rate, both astronomically high numbers. And this is honestly not all that different than some of the absolute top tier Agent Bounce decks that we saw in the past. It's almost like it just we just forgot about it. We weren't playing it. And then now, it's like, hey, why don't we pull that deck out? And now it's doing as well as it is. Obviously, Toxin did get buffed and stuff like that. But the cards you're seeing here are cards that have, there's nothing, I was going to say there's nothing new here, Alex. The Surge is new. Come on, Alex. Obviously, Surge is going to have a pretty legitimate impact on the shell, and it absolutely does. Surge does elevate the shell, of course, but other than Surge, you do got yourself a really competent list. If you don't have Surge, you could even consider something like a Joaquin Torres Falcon if you have that. I've always liked those version of the decks. I think Joaquin Torres Falcon is a lot of fun, but you have very clean lines. You got the Beast lines, you have the Falcon lines, you have the Toxin lines, and Toxin is such an intuitive card to play. If you're the kind of person that's like, Alex, I've never played Bounce, I don't want to play Bounce, seriously, Toxin, Falcon, and Beast, they synergize together in such a way where it's like, it makes, specifically Toxin makes Bounce a little easier to play, especially if you're relatively new to it. And then you have the ceiling of a 61% win rate deck with a 50.54 cube rate. So really impressive list overall, and that's going to take us to the top 3. In the top 3, we have 2 surprises and 1 absolute solid go-to deck. And the first is going to be Disrupt Surfer, which is running Fenris. And I would have called it Fenris Disrupt Surfer if I had enough space. It's running a 61% win rate and a 0.57 cube rate. This deck is pretty interesting because it does have disruption pieces like Gambit, Killmonger, and Moon Knight. Of course, you have the Red Guardian as well. And Gorgon, because the generated cards are actually pretty popular right now. And Gorgon tends to be a really good card. I will tell you that in my play experience with Gorgon, I find that he's probably really underappreciated. You're winning games with Gorgon's ability that he just has a great cube rate, a great win rate. Like, he's having a very high impact on the meta right now, especially with the popularity of Thanos and Arishem. Although it's number 10 on this list, in terms of popularity and game scope, those decks are seeing a lot of play. And Gorgon is a great counter to that. And in a Surfer deck, you can afford to have a 2-drop that works along the lines of like, well, I guess I'll counter created cards. It kind of fits that niche. You are cutting a Forge for it. On that note, if you don't have Gorgon, you could put Forge in, because Forge obviously still works here. Not as good as it used to, because you don't have the Sebastian Shaw and stuff like that, but still Forge and a Brood, classic gameplay. Fenris is cool because you play it on 2 and then you really get the payoff on turn 6. It's like that delayed effect, and with that payoff, you're bringing back things that you are Killmongering, destroying with Gambit, or of course Moon Knighting. And Moon Knight is very likely to hit something like a Proxima Midnight, which is great because it's going to provide you a lot of additional strength with that 5/7. So anyways, and Gambit of course can discard it too. So yeah, Disrupt Surfer doing great, and kind of funny to think that just straight up the traditional Fenris was traditional. I mean, we talked about it last week, but the other Fenris Surfer deck is also doing phenomenal. Now, you might think, Alex, you're basically just showing the same deck. Not really, because the focus of the two are very different. They do have some disruption pieces and obviously some similarities, particularly in Fenris and Gambit, I guess. But what you're looking at here is a little more of the, well, I'm going to Shang-Chi you and bring something back with the Fenris. And when people are looking at Surfer, I don't think they're anticipating something along the lines of a Shang-Chi. Moreover, this deck does do very well against the Thanos shells for a bit of a different reason. You're not running the Gorgon tech. Instead, you're running Surge, and you're going to take advantage of the Cassandra Nova side of the tech. You also have the Killmonger, which is going to wipe the board, Juggernaut, which is very effective, and I like the addition of Hope Summers here, especially since that extra energy that can be generated by Hope Summers can allow you on turn 6 to do a Shang-Chi Surfer activate Fenris play, and that's possible because of Hope Summers, because if you have Hope Summers, that extra energy that is provided can be used for Shang-Chi on turn 6, which is exactly where you want him. The stats don't lie. A 62% win rate at a 0.76 cube rate. Remarkably high quality shell right now that's doing wonders. And I feel like people are slowly starting to catch on to this. I talked about it last week. I'm talking about it this week. Seriously, it's a good time to be a Surfer player if that's what you want to do. Going to number 1. It's the highest win rate in Snap, although the cube rate's a little lower than the number 2, and it's Bullseye. Bullseye has been such a mainstay in Marvel Snap here, and this version is a little different because it does have the Grandmaster. There was some experimentation with the Grandmaster version. This one is running the Grandmaster. You also do see from time to time the Zola version. It seems as though like there's the three slight variations of the Bullseye deck, and each one kind of takes turns being at the top. This week here, we do have the Grandmaster edition taking the cake, which is cool. It's nice to see a little bit of variation here. If you don't have Grandmaster, you just run Zola. I like the Arnim Zola play. You basically copy the dock in, and if you don't want to play Zola, you play the Frigga version. You know what I mean? So you've got options here. It's a relatively inexpensive deck, all things considered, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's a hell of a lot of fun. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I sincerely appreciate you. As I said before, keep an eye out for some new and exciting content announcements that I have coming. I'm still in the planning phases of that, and I can't wait to showcase those to you because I'm trying to pull out all the stops and show you guys some really interesting, fascinating things. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you on that next one.